2 hours after burying my youngest son, my phone rang with a call that shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. I'm Mason Hayes, 59 years old, and I've spent the last 20 years building Hayes Construction Group from nothing after my Navy service. But that afternoon, sitting in my Austin home still wearing my dress blues from Cooper's funeral, I had no idea my eldest son had murdered his brother. I sat alone in my study on Cedar Park Drive, staring at the mahogany desk where Cooper and I used to review his engineering homework. Through the window, the Texas heat shimmered off the concrete, reminding me of all those job sites we'd visited together. He was 22, brilliant, full of dreams about revolutionizing construction engineering. The doctors called it sudden organ failure, rare, unexplainable. A healthy young man gone in less than a week. My wife Grace had been gone for 3 years. Cancer took her slowly, unlike whatever had taken Cooper so suddenly. Now the house felt like a tomb, echoing with memories of laughter that would never return. "Dad?" Hunter's voice drifted from the living room. My eldest son, 33, had stayed close since Cooper's death, playing the role of the grieving older brother perfectly. "You need anything? Maybe some coffee?" I didn't answer. The mourners had left an hour ago, their hollow words still echoing in my mind. He's in a better place now. Time heals all wounds. God needed another angel. Empty phrases from people who'd never lost a child, who couldn't understand the hollow ache that consumed every breath. That's when my phone buzzed. The name on the screen made me sit up straight. Professor Aurora Monroe, Cooper's engineering professor at UT Austin. She'd been at the funeral that morning, tears streaming down her face as she placed a white rose on the casket. Her hands had been shaking so badly she could barely hold the flower. "Professor Monroe?" "Mr. Hayes." Her voice trembled like autumn leaves in a storm. "I found something in Cooper's belongings. You need to see this immediately." My chest tightened like a vice. "What kind of something?" "I can't explain over the phone." Her breathing was ragged, desperate. "Please come to my office at the university right now. Engineering building, 3rd floor, room 314. I glanced toward the living room where Hunter was organizing sympathy cards with military precision, creating neat stacks on the coffee table. "Can't this wait until—" "No." The word came out sharp, frightened. "Mr. Hayes, please don't tell anyone you're coming. Not even—" She paused, and I could hear her struggling with the words. "Not even your other son. This is dangerous." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my heart pounding like heavy machinery. Dangerous. What could possibly be dangerous about Cooper's belongings? But something in Professor Monroe's voice triggered every instinct I'd learned in 12 years of Navy intelligence work. This wasn't grief talking. This was pure, undiluted fear. Hunter appeared in the doorway, his face arranged in perfect concern. "Going somewhere, Dad? You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a tired smile, calling on the same discipline that had gotten me through combat zones. "Just need to drive around. Clear my head. You know how it is. Want company? I could ride along. We could talk about Cooper, share some memories." "No, I need some time alone." "Won't be long." I stood, grabbing my keys from the desk drawer. "I'll be back before dinner." He stepped forward and pulled me into a brief hug. His embrace felt warm, genuine, protective. "Take your time, Dad. Grief isn't something you can rush. I'll be here when you get back. Maybe order us some barbecue from Franklin's." Cooper always loved their brisket. The mention of Cooper's favorite food hit me like a punch to the gut, but I managed a nod. "That sounds good, son. Thank you." 20 minutes later, I was pulling into the visitor parking at UT Austin in my F-150. The campus was nearly deserted on a Saturday evening, live oaks casting long shadows across the walkways where students normally hurried between classes. The engineering building loomed ahead, its modern glass facade reflecting the orange-pink sky that reminded me of those sunsets Cooper used to photograph for his Instagram. I took the stairs to the 3rd floor, my military training keeping me alert to every sound, every shadow. Professor Monroe's office was at the end of the hall, past laboratories filled with equipment that Cooper had described with such excitement. I'd been here 2 years ago when he declared engineering as his major, his eyes bright with plans to revolutionize how buildings could withstand hurricanes and earthquakes. Now, As I approached room 314, I noticed the door stood slightly ajar. Light spilled into the darkened hallway, and I could hear voices inside. My blood turned to ice water as the conversation became clear. "I told you to stay out of this." A male voice, low and threatening with an edge that made my Navy instincts snap to full alert. "Give it to me now and nobody else has to get hurt." "Please, this isn't what Cooper would have wanted." Professor Monroe's voice, frightened but still fighting. "He trusted you. How could you do this to him?" I said, "Give it to me. Now." I moved closer, pulse hammering like a construction jackhammer working overtime. Through the gap in the door, I caught a glimpse of Professor Monroe backed against her filing cabinet, hands raised in surrender. Her face was white as paper, eyes wide with the kind of terror I'd seen in war zones. And standing before her, gripping what looked like a worn leather journal in his left hand while gesturing threateningly with his right, was Hunter, my eldest son. The man who was supposed to be home grieving with me, ordering barbecue and sharing memories of his dead brother. Instead, he was here, threatening the woman who'd called me in desperation. The world tilted on its axis. Everything I thought I knew about my family, about the relationships between my sons, crumbled in that single moment. Hunter wasn't here to collect Cooper's things out of love or duty. He was here to destroy evidence. My hand moved instinctively toward the door handle, then stopped. 20 years of military experience kicked in. I needed to know more. I needed to understand what was in that journal, why Professor Monroe was terrified, and why my son was threatening her. Taking a deep breath, I prepared to enter a situation that would change everything I believed about the people I loved most in this world. I didn't think. 20 years of Navy training took over, and I pushed the door open. The hinges creaked like an old ship under stress. Hunter spun around, his face shifting from fury to forced surprise in an instant. For a split second, I saw something in his eyes. Calculation, not shock. He'd been expecting this moment, preparing for it. "Dad?" Hunter's voice was smooth, controlled, like honey over broken glass. "What are you doing here? I thought you were going for a drive." For a moment, I couldn't force words past the knot in my throat. My son stood there, Cooper's leather journal clutched in his hand like evidence at a crime scene. His face was arranged into the perfect mask of concern, but I'd interrogated enough people in the Navy to recognize when someone was performing. Behind him, Professor Monroe was pressed against the filing cabinet, her fingers trembling like leaves in a hurricane. Her eyes met mine, frightened, desperate, pleading. "I could ask you the same thing," I said finally, my voice steadier than I felt. "You told me you'd be home ordering barbecue." Hunter glanced at the journal, then back at me, his expression softening into something that looked like grief mixed with responsibility. "I couldn't just sit around, Dad. I kept thinking about Cooper's things, how the university would just box everything up and stick it in storage somewhere. I needed to do something productive, something that honored his memory." He gestured toward Professor Monroe with what appeared to be genuine gratitude. Professor Monroe was kind enough to help me gather his projects, his research notes. I wanted to make sure nothing important got lost in the bureaucracy. Professor Monroe nodded, but it was too quick, too mechanical. "Yes," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We were just organizing things." Every instinct I'd developed in naval intelligence was screaming warnings, but Hunter's explanation sounded reasonable, even thoughtful. The responsible older brother, taking care of details I was supposedly too grief-stricken to handle. It was exactly what I would expect from the son who'd always been mature beyond his years. "That's very thoughtful of you," I said carefully, watching both their faces. "Cooper would appreciate that." Hunter stepped toward me, placing a steady hand on my shoulder. His touch was warm, familiar, the same gesture he'd used to comfort me at Grace's funeral 3 years ago. "Let's go home, Dad. You shouldn't be driving all over town tonight. Your emotions are raw, and I worry about you being alone on the roads." He turned to Professor Monroe with what looked like a grateful smile. "Thank you so much for your help tonight. I know this was difficult for you too. Cooper spoke about you often, said you were his favorite professor." She nodded again, color slowly returning to her cheeks. He was a special student, very talented." "I'll return Monday morning for the rest of his things," Hunter continued smoothly. "Would 9 a.m. work for you?" "Yes, that would be fine." As Hunter guided me toward the door with gentle pressure on my arm, I saw Professor Monroe's hand move in a quick, precise motion. Something small and white disappeared into my jacket pocket so smoothly I almost missed it. When I glanced back, our eyes met one final time. Her lips shaped a single word, silent but unmistakable. Careful. Outside in the parking lot, Hunter walked me to my F-150. His sleek black sedan sat 3 spaces away, gleaming under the parking lot lights. Everything about the moment felt normal, like a concerned son taking care of his grieving father. "See you at home," he said, pulling me into a hug that felt genuine and protective. "Drive safe, Dad. Take your time if you need to stop somewhere and think. I'll order that barbecue and have it waiting when you're ready." He drove off first, his taillights disappearing into the Austin traffic. Only when I was completely alone did I reach into my pocket with shaking fingers. A torn piece of notepad paper, the handwriting barely legible. Journal. His room under mattress. Trust no one. Call me tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. My cell 512-55-0147. Be careful. My hands trembled as I got into my truck. The drive back to Cedar Park felt endless, my thoughts spiraling between what I'd witnessed and what seemed impossible to believe. Why would Professor Monroe fear Hunter? What was in Cooper's journal that required such secrecy? And why had she risked slipping me that note? I turned onto Cedar Park Drive as the sun finally disappeared behind the hills. Hunter's car was already parked in its usual spot, and through the front window I could see him moving around the living room, probably setting up the barbecue he'd promised. The scene looked so normal, so caring. A devoted son taking care of his father's needs during the worst time of his life. But Professor Monroe's terrified eyes kept flashing in my memory, along with that single word. Careful. I waited in the driveway for 5 long minutes, watching Hunter through the window. He moved with purpose, straightening throw pillows, organizing the sympathy cards into neater stacks, checking his phone periodically. Normal activities, but now they seemed different somehow, like performances for an audience of one. Finally, he disappeared down the hallway toward his bedroom. I took a deep breath, called on every bit of stealth training the Navy had drilled into me, and slipped inside the house as quietly as possible. The hardwood floors creaked slightly under my weight, sounds that had never bothered me before but now seemed as loud as gunshots. I paused, listening for any sign that Hunter had heard me, but the house remained quiet except for the distant sound of running water from his bathroom. Cooper's room was at the end of the hall, past the family photos that now felt like monuments to everything we'd lost. Grace smiling at our wedding, the boys as children, Hunter's arm protectively around Cooper's shoulders, family vacations where everyone looked genuinely happy. Had it all been a lie? I pushed open Cooper's door and stepped into a shrine to interrupted dreams. Everything was exactly as he'd left it. Unmade bed with engineering textbooks scattered across the comforter, his laptop still open to a CAD program, the half-finished bridge model he'd been perfecting for his senior project. The faint trace of his cologne still clung to the air, a ghost that made my chest tight with fresh grief. But I pushed the emotion aside. I had a mission now, and 20 years of military discipline took over. I lifted the mattress with steady hands, and there, pressed against the box spring like a secret waiting to explode, lay Cooper's worn leather journal, the companion that had been with him through high school and college, filled with his thoughts, dreams, and apparently, his growing fears. With trembling fingers, I opened to the first entry and began to read the story of my son's murder. The first entry was dated 7 weeks ago, written in Cooper's careful engineering handwriting. Week 1. Hunter brought me some premium vitamins today, said they'd help with stress during finals and my senior project deadlines. He's been so supportive lately, checking on me more than usual. It feels good to have my big brother looking out for me. Mom would be proud to see us so close. My hands shook as I turned the page. The ink seemed to blur as I read. Week 2. Still taking the vitamins Hunter gave me. They're in unmarked bottles, but he said that's normal for high-end supplements. I trust him completely. He's always been the responsible one, the one Dad relies on for business decisions. The entries continued, and with each page, my blood grew colder. Week 3. Feeling nauseous lately. Tired all the time, even with 8 hours of sleep. Maybe I'm overworked with the bridge project and job applications. Hunter says the vitamins help, so I keep taking them. 2 pills every morning with breakfast, just like he instructed. Week 4. Went to the campus health center. Nurse couldn't figure out what's wrong. blood pressure a little high, which is weird for someone my age. She suggested I cut back on caffeine, but I barely drink coffee. Hunter says it's just senior year stress. Everyone goes through it. I had to stop reading for a moment. The sound of running water from Hunter's bathroom had stopped. I listened intently, but heard only the settling of the house and the distant hum of traffic. Week 5. Something's really wrong. I looked up my symptoms online. Fatigue, nausea, confusion, muscle weakness. Nothing fits exactly, but every time I take those vitamins, I feel worse about an hour later. Maybe I'm imagining things. Hunter would never hurt me. We're brothers. The next entry was shorter, the handwriting less steady. Week 6. Found the vitamin bottle when Hunter wasn't home. No brand name, no FDA approval, just chemical codes stamped on cheap plastic. CAS 7440 439, CAS 7782 492. I took photos. Why would he give me something with no labels? When I asked, he said high-end supplements don't need fancy packaging, that I should trust him. But something feels wrong. A photograph was taped to the page, 2 small amber bottles with handwritten codes. I'd never seen chemical notation like that, but my gut told me these weren't vitamins. The final entry was dated 3 days before Cooper died, the handwriting barely legible. I'm really scared now. Been researching those chemical codes. CAS 744 to 439 is cadmium. CAS 7782 492 is selenium. Both are toxic in high doses. Both cause the exact symptoms I've been having. I've been taking poison for 6 weeks. I don't want to believe it, but the evidence is right here. Hunter is poisoning me. But why? I've never competed with him for Dad's attention or the business. I was going to be an engineer, not a contractor. We had different paths. If I tell Dad, it'll destroy our family. Everything Dad built. Everything he believes about his sons. Maybe there's an explanation. Maybe Hunter doesn't know what he's giving me. Maybe someone tricked him too. But deep down, I know the truth. My brother is trying to kill me. And I don't know what to do. The entry ended there. Ink smeared like tears had fallen on the page. I sat on Cooper's bed, the journal heavy as a tombstone in my hands. The truth struck me with devastating clarity. Hunter had murdered his younger brother slowly, systematically, while I praised their close relationship and made plans for the family business legacy. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, getting closer. "Dad!" Hunter's voice called from somewhere near the living room. "I've got the barbecue set up. You hungry?" I slipped the journal inside my jacket and moved toward Cooper's window. The old house had a fire escape system I'd installed years ago, metal stairs zigzagging down from each bedroom to the backyard. Grace had insisted on them after reading about a house fire in the newspaper. I unlocked the window as quietly as possible. The cool night air carried the smell of cedar and distant barbecue smoke from neighboring houses. I swung my leg over the windowsill just as footsteps approached Cooper's door. "Dad, are you in Cooper's room?" I didn't look back. My military training kicked in. Move fast, stay quiet, complete the mission. The metal stairs were slippery from evening dew, but I descended carefully. 20 feet down, 15, 10. When my boots hit the grass, I moved quickly toward the side gate. The gate was unlocked, just as we'd always kept it for convenience. I slipped through and found myself on Cedar Park Drive, my own house glowing with warm light behind me. Through the front window, I could see Hunter moving through the living room, probably looking for me. My truck sat in the driveway, but I couldn't risk going back for it. Hunter would spot me immediately. Instead, I pulled out my phone and dialed the number I'd relied on for 15 years. Lincoln Pierce. His voice was alert, despite the late hour. Old Army habits never die. "Lincoln, I need help." My voice sounded strange, hollow. "I'm at the corner of Cedar Park and Ranch Road. Can you pick me up?" Lincoln Pierce had been my executive assistant since I started Hayes Construction. Former Army logistics specialist, the most reliable man I'd ever known outside the military. He'd guided me through permit battles, contractor disputes, and Grace's cancer treatment. But this was different. I'm 20 minutes away. Stay put. I found cover behind a neighbor's live oak tree and watched my house. Lights flicked on in Cooper's room. Hunter had discovered I'd been there. Then the hallway light, then his bedroom light. He was searching, probably realizing that something was wrong. My phone buzzed, a text from Hunter. "Dad, where are you? I'm worried. Please come home." I turned off the phone. 20 minutes felt like 20 hours, but finally headlights approached. Lincoln's silver Honda pulled over and I ran to the passenger door. "Drive," I said as I climbed in. Lincoln pulled away without questions, another military habit. We drove in silence toward downtown Austin, the city lights blurring past like memories I couldn't quite focus on. "Where to?" he asked after we'd put several miles between us and Cedar Park. "Your apartment. I need somewhere safe to think." He nodded and took the exit toward South First Street. "Want to talk about it?" I pressed my hand against my jacket, feeling Cooper's journal beneath the fabric like evidence of my failure as a father. "My son is a murderer," I said, "and I need your help to prove it." Lincoln didn't even blink. "What do you need?" 10 minutes later, we sat in Lincoln's downtown apartment. I told him everything. Professor Monroe's terrified call, finding Hunter threatening her, the journal entries, the chemical evidence. When I handed him Cooper's journal, his weathered hands shook as he read. "Cadmium and selenium," he said, his Army medic training kicking in. "Slow-acting poisons, brilliant and evil. Symptoms look like stress or illness until it's too late." Before I could respond, Lincoln's TV flickered on with the morning news. My blood turned to ice. "Breaking news from UT Austin," the anchor announced. "Professor Aurora Monroe was found dead this morning from an apparent fall from her office building. Preliminary reports suggest suicide, though police are investigating." The journal slipped from my hands. "They killed her. She tried to warn me, and they killed her." Lincoln placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "She died doing the right thing. We won't let it be for nothing." "We can't go to the police yet," I said, grief hardening into cold determination. "They'll say Cooper was paranoid, that I'm a grieving father seeing conspiracies. We need more evidence." "Then what do? We get his confession, and we make sure the whole world hears it." We spent the next week gathering evidence. Using my CEO access, we broke into Hunter's office computer and found email chains with our CFO, Phoenix Clark. The messages were devastating. Discussions of poison procurement, splitting embezzled company funds, and Hunter's gambling debts that had triggered the whole scheme. We planted listening devices and recorded Hunter and Phoenix discussing their timeline, how they'd announce Hunter as company president at our annual foundation ceremony, then liquidate assets and disappear to Mexico. The most damning recording came on Thursday night. "I should have done this years ago," Hunter's voice crackled through our speakers. "He was always Dad's favorite. Cooper this, Cooper that. Perfect grades, perfect son. Well, not anymore." The satisfaction in his voice made me physically ill. Friday evening arrived. The Hayes Construction Foundation ceremony at the Four Seasons Austin. 300 guests filled the ballroom. Investors, city officials, contractors, and local media. They'd come to celebrate our latest community project and witness Hunter's coronation as company president. I watched from backstage as Hunter took the podium, resplendent in his midnight blue suit. The mirror of success, ready to inherit everything I'd built. "Good evening," Hunter began, his voice carrying perfectly across the room. "To continue my father's extraordinary legacy is both a professional honor and a sacred family duty." He paused for effect. My late brother Cooper would have been proud. He believed engineering could transform communities, build better futures for families like ours. His voice cracked with practiced emotion. "This company is built on family values, integrity, and the dreams we pass down through generations." The applause was thunderous. Cameras flashed. Hunter basked in admiration he'd literally killed for. Then Lincoln cut the lights. 3 seconds of darkness, confusion rippling through the crowd. When the lights returned, I stood beside Hunter at the podium. Gasps swept the ballroom. I wore my navy dress blues, the same uniform I'd worn to Cooper's funeral, now transformed into armor for this battle. "Mr. Hayes," someone called, "we thought you were still in mourning." Hunter's face drained of color. "Dad, what are you doing here?" I approached the microphone, my voice cutting through the murmur like a blade. "I'm here to tell the truth about how my son died." Silence crashed over the room. Lincoln activated the presentation screen. Cooper's journal pages appeared. Entries describing his growing fear, the mysterious vitamins, his desperate realization that his brother was poisoning him. Then came the emails between Hunter and Phoenix, white text on black background. Source the substance, untraceable. $5,000. Once he's gone, the company's mine. Split the $850,000 offshore. Shocked whispers erupted. Phones rose to record history. Finally, the audio played. Hunter's own voice confessing his satisfaction at eliminating his perfect younger brother. The ballroom exploded into chaos. Reporters surged forward. Board members stared at Hunter in horror. Hunter spun toward Phoenix Clark in the third row. "You promised this was foolproof." Phoenix stood, panic breaking his composure. "Don't blame me. You're the one who wanted your brother dead. You provided the poison. You had $180,000 in gambling debts. I just helped for my cut." They screamed accusations while 300 witnesses recorded everything. Detective Archer Wells entered with 6 officers. They'd been waiting outside, listening to the confession broadcast live. Hunter's eyes darted wildly. He bolted toward the exit, but the crowd formed an impenetrable wall, phones raised like shields of truth, camera flashes blinding him. He stumbled, covering his face, but there was nowhere to hide. Under Austin's brightest lights, his crimes were exposed to the world. 6 weeks later, Judge Patricia Sullivan pronounced sentence. Hunter Hayes, Phoenix Clark, life imprisonment without possibility of parole. Hunter looked at me across the courtroom one final time. I looked away. Today, I stand in the offices of the Cooper Hayes Engineering Scholarship Fund. Through the window hangs Cooper's photograph, smiling beside his bridge model, full of dreams that will now live through others. Lincoln hands me a folder. First recipient interviews this morning. Sarah Martinez enters, nervous but determined, clutching designs that remind me of Cooper's passion. She works 2 jobs while studying engineering at UT Austin. "Thank you for this opportunity," she whispers. "I won't waste it." I smile genuinely for the first time in months. Make Cooper proud. Later, I kneel at Cooper's grave in Austin Memorial Park, placing sunflowers on the headstone. "Your dreams are helping others now," I whisper. "I couldn't save you, but I can save what you believed in." A breeze rustles the live oak above. For the first time since that terrible phone call, I feel peace. Not happiness, but meaning. I lost 2 sons, one to death, one to greed. But through Cooper's legacy, others will rise. Justice was served. Something beautiful grew from the darkness. And that's enough.